Thank you everyone for tuning in. Today we'll be talking about food coloring and how to do some hand lettering with it. I've gotten a lot of questions on my Instagram page, so I thought it was about time I got myself on YouTube and did a tutorial of sorts for you guys. I hope you enjoy it. Up first, we're going to talk about some materials that you'll need for today's lesson. So we're going to go over what materials we need when we're working with food coloring. First off, of course, is watercolor paper. It's going to be absorbing the ink the most, and this is my favorite. Personally, I love the Canson XL watercolor paper. I've tried all kinds. Some of them bleed a little more, some of them are a little higher quality, but I personally just go back to this pad every single time. You can purchase it at Michael's, but they tend to be a little pricier. You can always use a coupon, but I recently found that Walmart carries the 9x12, which is my favorite size to work on because I can always cut it down if I need smaller sheets, and I don't tend to work on any pieces that are any bigger than the 9x12. And at Walmart, they're only like five and some change, so really good deal. You could also find them online, I'm sure, if you just type in Canson XL watercolor. Next, we'll need brushes. You can use a traditional brush. I tend not to use them. I can't control them very well. I prefer water brushes, which are just like regular brushes, but they have synthetic bristles usually. And inside the chamber, you can add water. So the tip is consistently wet and you don't have to keep dipping it constantly into water or anything like that. And so let's go through some particular ones, some of my favorites that I like to use. But as a disclaimer, you can really use anything. I just have found through purchasing random ones that I find, anytime I find a new brush, I'll purchase it, at least one of them, just so I can try it out. So here are a few of my faves. First up is some of the Caran d'Ache water brushes. I recently found these in a pack of 3 at a Jerry's Autorama. But if you follow me on Instagram, I've been posting a lot with this red one in particular. It is amazing. It's a fiber tip brush, so it doesn't have bristles like a regular brush, so it acts more like an actual brush marker, which is amazing because you don't have to worry about the brushes fraying or anything happening to them, and it creates a clean, consistent line, and it actually holds a lot of ink to create a really high saturated look, which we'll get into later, but that is like the most amazing water brush that I've ever encountered, and one that I have just been posting so much for. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, I highly suggest you do. You can totally see all of my latest works with that pen. And later on, when we get into actually writing with these, I'll be using this one as my primary water brush to show you the food coloring. Lastly, I'm just going to go through a few different brushes, not too many, because I have so many that we can go through, and that I can always make a whole nother video of just water brushes if you guys would like. So starting from the top, we have the Pentel Aquash water brush, and they come in multiple sizes. You can purchase them individually or as a pack. I've seen them at Michael's, Hobby Lobby. You can find them on websites everywhere, Amazon. So that one's really great. Next up is the Marvy water brush, and I found this in like a fine and extra fine. I found these at Hobby Lobby and Michael's, and I'm sure you can find them online somewhere as well. The third brush is the Sakura Koi water brush, and these come in all kinds of sizes, both for the brushes and the barrels themselves. They sell some pocket-sized ones, which are great for traveling. The fourth one is a Kuretake water brush, and I, for the life of me, cannot seem to find it online anywhere, and I honestly can't remember, but they do have a wide range of brushes available, and I love this brand to death. Like, I buy so many things from this particular brand, so I would just suggest looking up Kuretake water brushes, and I've tried quite a few of them, and I would just run with it. Up first is the Wilton Colorite color system. I just purchased these a few days ago, so I haven't used them much. I use them for one post, but something that's unique about these is that they have specific colors, and they come with this mixing guide that helps you figure out what colors you want and which ones you should mix to create the perfect color. I thought this was really cool. These are a little pricey. This whole set's $20. I found them at Walmart, but you can also find them in individual packs if you want to just kind of try it. And they look like this. But primarily today, for today's video, I won't be using these. I'll be using some that I'll show you in just a second. But I just wanted to let you know that these were out there, and I can always make an updated post once I really start working with them. Wilton also sells these gel food coloring tubes. You do have to mix them with water, so they can be a little tricky because if you put too much water, it'll bleed way too much on the paper and won't be saturated enough and won't be bright. But I do like to mix these with the regular watercolor, just like a little bit. You can get different shades, so they are really nice. This is what they look like in the store, so if you go look for them, you know what their packaging is. But I won't be using these today, and I rarely touch them. But again, here's just another option for you in case you can't find any of the others. These are the McCormick food coloring, and I love these. They're my absolute favorite. They come in 2 different boxes. You have the assorted and the neon, which is nice. They are already liquid, so you don't have to add water to them, and I usually don't recommend that you add any anyways because they can get super diluted and they just spread and bleed all over the paper. I haven't had good results when mixing with water. I just dip the brush directly into it. And even with the brushes that you use, if you need a darker version of it, you can kind of just layer onto it, and I'll show you that later. But they're fantastic food coloring, and you can find them anywhere. Walmart, your local grocery store. So these are great, and they're usually the most accessible. Lastly, you'll need a water dish. This is just so you can clean off your brush if you're switching from color to color. I don't use it as much usually with food coloring because lately when I do use food coloring, if I'm mixing 2 colors, I want the brush to stay dirty with the previous color so they kind of blend together. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. You can use anything for a water dish. I bought this one in particular at Joann. It's made for painting, so you'll find it in like the painting aisle. And it's really great because when it's empty, it can collapse all the way down and store easily, or if you need to take it with you, at least gets really flat and you don't have to worry about it being this bulky thing in your bag. Here's a quick shot of it on Amazon, so that way you can get the name. I absolutely love this one. So next we're going to need somewhere to actually put the food coloring on. I like to use this little dish because I can just squirt a little bit inside and use multiple colors at once, or if I wanted to mix, I can do that. But you can use anything. You can use just a regular dish in your cupboard if you don't have anything particular like this. You can easily purchase these online or Michael's, Joann, or Hobby Lobby, and they're only a couple bucks. For these very basic ones, they also have some nicer ones. They have some made out of ceramic, all really great. But I'm good with this this one in particular. It's great, especially when you use a wider palette with a lot of colors. But if you are mixing, or if you're going to make a large quantity because you're going to work on a big piece and you want to be able to save it, then you can use one of these little tubs, mix it in there, and you can always cap it off and put it away for later. These I've also purchased at Michael's. They sell them connected. They sell this one in particular is separate, so you have a bunch of separate ones. I have all kinds. And you can find them at your local art store too, because they're very common. You can also grab a paper towel if you like, so that way in between colors you can always dry it off, or I tend to get watercolor everywhere, so I always have to wipe it off my hands, fingers, or something like that. Let's do a quick recap. We'll need watercolor paper, your water brush, whatever food coloring you'll be using, a dish for water, a dish to put your inks in, a paper towel, and a pencil if you like to sketch out your writing before you get, all your food coloring involved. We're going to start off with me just writing the alphabet, just so you can see what I do with my brush when I'm writing something. This technique is very simple. It's just all about re-dipping your brush into the ink as often as possible so you can get that really high saturated first stroke that then blends into a lighter stroke. Because of the way that this tip works in particular, it's very dark the moment you put it on the paper and very quickly gets very light. And as long as you continue to dip, you'll have the light and darkness that everyone has been asking me about on my Instagram page. I cleaned my brush because I'd used it a little bit earlier for another post, and I put all of my inks out. This is just, I don't do it all the time for all of them. This is just for the video. I'll usually just put 1 or 2 colors. I never really use much more than that at a time. And I just put a little bit so that way it doesn't go to waste. And if I need more, I'll just squeeze out some more. So I'm going to use this magenta color, and if you notice, I'm tapping my tip into the ink so that way it gets as dark as possible and absorbs as much as we can since it's the first time. So I'm just going to start writing, and as you can see, it starts out very dark, and as I continue, it gets lighter. And once it gets as light as I'd like it to get, I go ahead and re-dip. Sometimes it'll be for an entire letter, or sometimes mid-letter I will go ahead and add some more. And you will figure out what you like most as you start writing. So in the water brush itself, I only put water. I've never really put ink, because once you put ink inside of a barrel like that, it usually will stain it, and it'll be very difficult to get another color. So if you have a bunch of water brushes, then go ahead and try that. But I always just use water, just so the tip is consistently wet. And in this I and J combination right here, you'll see just how dark the eye starts, and then I just continue to pull down on that ink, and it just gets super light, which is awesome. Doing this alphabet is an exercise that I always do as a warm-up. If I haven't touched an item in a really long time, if I don't know quite what to write, or if I'm just getting used to a new brush or any new pen, marker, anything, just running through the alphabet helps you figure out how that brush is going to move when you're doing each stroke for each letter. And it kind of helps you figure out what angle you want to hold it at and all that. This brush also starts out very thin, and as you use it, it will start to fray a little bit and like get bolder, which I prefer. I don't like how thin it is when you first start to use it. And remember, with all your materials, don't use it directly straight down on the tip. I still have it a little bit angled, so I use the side of it versus just directly up and down. And just a good tip to keep in mind, when you're lettering, you're not writing the letters, you're drawing them, so they take a little more time. Don't worry about being too fast, don't worry about speeding up. Anything you see on social media is usually sped up just to fit the 1 minute time frame, say on something like Instagram. So don't ever feel bad if you take long, that's totally okay. I'm not very fast, I like to take my time. If you go too fast, your letters won't be as structured, they'll be a little more wonky. And if you go too slow, they might start wobbling and the lines won't be so straight. So you just have to find a happy medium for yourself, and it will vary. So just, again, don't worry about being slow or trying to speed up. That's not the way to get your letters done right. Quick recap. Remember, it's super simple. All you do is dip your brush into the food coloring. Go ahead and start writing. You'll notice it gets lighter the more your ink runs out of the brush itself, of the brush tip. So as soon as you want to get dark again, just go ahead and re-dip. And remember to have the patience to just do it as often as you need so you can get your desired effect. If you want the ombre effect to kind of go a little longer, you won't dip as often. If you want it to be at every letter, remember at every stroke, just lift up, dip your brush in, and continue writing your letters. Now we will look at using two different colors to write with, and usually I'll do something like yellow and blue, because when those two, combine, you'll have green in between. You could do yellow and red, and that way you get reds, pinks, and all kinds like that. But you can mix and match. In this case, I'm doing a light green with a dark green, so I can get every shade in between. And as we start, I usually start with a lighter color and then dip into the dark. So that way, if you go from dark to light, you're never going to see that truly light color first. So always start off with a light color and then dip dark. The longer you write, the more they're going to combine on the tip of your pen. And so whenever you want a new color, either dip in the lighter one or the darker one. It's really a matter of preference. So just play around with it. I would just do a bunch of letters continuously, dipping in all kinds of inks. The more practice you get, the better it'll be and the easier it'll be to kind of figure out what you want and what will come next. I still struggle sometimes. I'm like, oh, I should have dipped it in the other one. But it's fine. It's still going to look gorgeous when you dip them together. Right now I'm cleaning the brush because, as you can see, even though I was dipping in the lighter green, it was already contaminated by the dark green. So by cleaning my brush, I was able to pick up that really light green again. And after a while, you'll just have to redo some of it, like redo some of the ink into wherever you're holding it, because it will get dark. So, because both colors will be going into one another in order to do that kind of combination. The more you clean it, the more pure your colors will stay, of course. And by it, I meant your brush. And you can do both script and non-script in this fashion. As you can see, I am still doing and kind of like an ombre effect with both of them, but the letters don't necessarily have to connect for it to look cool. So you can totally do your block, which is really nice. And you don't necessarily have to stick with just the colors that come in these food coloring bottles. You know, I usually don't blend them, but the other day I had some pink and I think some blue left over. I can't remember. I made brown, all in all, and it actually came out really nice. So at the end of whatever you're doing, go ahead and just practice mixing and matching some colors, because sometimes you'll get some really interesting effects. And as I said earlier, just remember patience. Things like this, when you're combining more than one color together, just take patience. If you're writing and it seems to just be giving you the same exact color, stop a second, clean your brush, and pick up, you know, a new color, and keep going. And even if you don't quite like it, if it's like a really light color, you can always go over it with a darker one if you want to change it up. But even if you have two letters that are exactly the same, as long as you have some sort of variation in there, it'll still look good. My blending here isn't perfect. It's not like every other letter is exactly a different color, but it still looks cool to have that effect of the light and the dark blending together. And now on the top I did the two different kinds of greens, and right now I'm kind of cleaning my brush so I can do the blue and green. And for that blue, anything that's light, of course, once again, is going to be really difficult to keep pure after that first stroke. So just remember to clean up your brush every once in a while, and just play with it. There's really no big secret or trick to do this. It's just a matter of taking the patience and choosing each color and picking up your pen instead of just completely writing the word all in one go. And just a little reminder that in my water brush, I only keep water inside. I don't add any ink into the inside. That's just a personal choice. But you totally can and try it out. I'm trying to think of some questions that I could possibly answer that I know I've gotten on Instagram. I can't think of anything else at the moment. But if you do have any questions, or if there's something I just, forgot to point out or didn't explain in here very well, please feel free to leave me a comment below and I will be more than happy to answer. Here I just wanted to show you a close-up of the two-color blend. I know sometimes it's difficult to really get in there with this whole zoomed-out view. As you can see, the blue is super bright, but the moment I stick my pen into the green to mix it together, it just completely disappears. And on that second line, I didn't do a good job of blending them. They all kind of look green, and that's because I didn't clean my brush at all. And knowing that I was using such a dark color, you have to clean it more often so that way you don't just kind of blend in everything looking just all dark or one color. For the previous few examples, I have basically been doing a monoline stroke, meaning there are no thicks and thins, it's just one same size line to create all the letters, which this pen does beautifully. But if you like your thicks and thins, you can totally do your faux-ligraphy, meaning you create the thicks and thins yourself. So remember, for every downstroke, you make your letter thicker. For every upstroke, you leave it thin. So once again, your downstroke, so every time your brush pen, your hand physically moves down on any part of the letter, it's going to be thicker. Any part where your hand physically moves up in an upstroke, whether it's slanted or straight up, that's going to stay thin. And those are the core basically the core principles to do faux-ligraphy. It doesn't matter what kind of letter you're doing, as long as you follow those principles and just think about the way your hand is moving, then you'll definitely just get it down. It takes a little bit of practice to get it, because sometimes you're just like, is this slanted, or is this up, is this down? It happens a lot to me with certain letters, and I still kind of struggle. And once you master it though, and once you understand it, you can kind of play with the rules of it. Many times I will not thicken a downstroke just because I don't want it to be accented. A lot of times when I do my R's with lowercase r's with that really big loop on the top, I won't thicken it up because I don't want it to be too heavy. And that's something you can decide once you get all the basics down and know the principles. And sometimes you can kind of fudge them and ignore them when you feel it's necessary. Since the rest of this alphabet is taking a little longer because I have to add the thick strokes, unlike the one when I was doing the monoline, where it was just much faster to go through all the letters, I can talk to you about the faux-ligraphy with other materials like markers and regular water brushes, or traditional brushes as well. And it's the same principle where you thicken downstrokes and thin upstrokes. So if you have a marker that has a flexible tip, and there's so many out there, if you don't know where to start, I would definitely recommend Crayola markers. They're broad tip. They're, the traditional Crayola marker that you think of when you think Crayola. They're excellent for starting out. They have flexible tips. They're cheap, available everywhere, and they don't wear down as quickly as some other brushes. So with the same principles of thick downstrokes and thin upstrokes, all it is about pressure. With this brush, you can't do pressure because it's all pretty much the same. It's not going to really vary. But with something like Crayola marker or any pen or marker with a flexible tip, as your hand goes down, make sure to apply pressure. As your hand goes up, make sure to relieve pressure. And I'm going to be doing, the next segment will be with a traditional water brush, so you'll see me do that. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be like intense pressure in order to get a thick stroke. With one marker, you can get all kinds of lines. Of course, the harder you press down, the thicker the downstroke will be, but it will be more difficult to control a lot of times when you go too thick, and your hand can start hurting and cramping up if you're because you're so stiff trying to push that marker down. After doing so many videos with the Caran d'Ache Monoline pen, the fiber tip brush, I figured I'd at least do one with a traditional water brush. So for those of you who can't access that one or don't want to use it, you can still get a similar effect. It's not going to be as intense because of the way that the other brush hits the paper. It's like extremely dark and saturated, but you can still get something very similar, as you can see where I go from light to dark, and you can go back again. Same thing as the other brush. You're going to want to clean it as soon as your letters start getting all muddled and just all dark at the same time. And as far as your traditional water brushes go, seriously take my advice from earlier, and anytime you see one, if it's one you haven't tried before, go ahead and try it. Michael's and Hobby Lobby, Joann, for anyone who's in the US and has access to those stores, always have all kinds, and they have them in all kinds of sections. I found them when, coloring books were a huge thing. They had a whole coloring book section. You can find them with the regular paintbrushes or in their side aisles, and you can even find them usually in their stamping aisles. Wherever they have stuff for rubber stamps and inks, they have brushes in there too. So don't just visit the paint aisle, because a lot of times these water brushes are hiding in all kinds of sections in these art stores and craft stores. I have tried some online. Where I purchase a lot of my stuff is on jetpens.com. I love them. They have really good prices, and they have a lot of stuff that I can't really find in stores in the US, which is awesome. So you can always try them, or you can try Amazon. And the effects that I'm working on here can really be done with any water brush, and even a traditional one too. Once again, I just don't have very many traditional brushes. I don't really know where to start. I just completely get overwhelmed when I get to that section and just kind of give up. So they're not really my thing, but I know there are a lot of lettering artists on Instagram that make wonders with a traditional brush. So maybe that's something I will work on trying to perfect and trying to get a little better at. When I start the block letters, I tend to tilt my brush almost completely to its side and use it completely at a flat angle so I can get that really thick downstroke that gives it that nice blocky look. When I was doing the script, I tilted a little bit, but not all the way on its side, and I don't use the entirety of the side of the brush, if that made any sense. The entire side of the brush. But yeah, doing that really helps. You can also do it and fill in and do kind of a faux-ligraphy look with block letters too, where you start very thin and then add your other thin line and fill in the two lines to make your thick strokes. Either way is fine. It's easier to do faux-ligraphy when you're doing block lettering with a water brush because you have more control. As you can see, my B is a lot thicker than the rest of the letters as far as the downstrokes go because it's really hard to control it on its side. But if you're looking for kind of a mismatched look, it could totally work out for you. So this is the final portion of this video. This is just the picture or the process for the photo that I had at the very beginning. I'm kind of combining all the colors, and as you can tell, they do get very muddy, but it could be a really fun thing. The more you clean your brush once again, the more you can really let those colors pop, but you don't want to do it too often because you still want them to blend and you don't want it to be just like one individual color for each one. So that's really nice. I really appreciate you guys watching this with me today. Please leave any feedback. I would really appreciate it. Sorry for all the ums. I'm trying to control it and re-record so many times, but I just couldn't get them all out. So thanks for bearing with me as far as all that goes. If you have any questions, you can comment or go ahead and find me on Instagram. My name is @VeronicaLetters, and I'm also on Twitter and Facebook. I'm not as active on there as I am on Instagram. Instagram, I'm most active, so please give me a follow there. If you have any questions, feel free to message me, comment, and all that. If you do want to learn how to do some lettering, both block and script, I do have some worksheets available on my Etsy shop. The link will be below. They're a really good start when you're really not quite sure where to start going. I do hope to update more and perhaps give you some more videos that'll help go along with those, but we'll see what the future holds. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the video.